Andrei Alexandrovich Zhdanov was a Soviet politician. After World War II, he was thought to be the successor-in-waiting to Joseph Stalin, but Zhdanov died before Stalin's career. Zhdanov enlisted with the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party in 1915 and was promoted through the party ranks, becoming the all-Union Communist Party manager in Leningrad after the assassination of Sergei Kirov in 1934. He was chairman of the RSFSR Supreme Soviet from 20 July 1938 to 20 June 1947. Though somewhat less active than Vyacheslav Molotov, Joseph Stalin, Lazar Kaganovich and Klement Voroshilov, Zhdanov was a major perpetrator of the Great Terror and personally approved 176 documented execution lists. In June 1940, he was sent to Estonia to supervise the establishment of the Estonian Soviet Socialist Republic and its annexation by the USSR. Zhdanov took a leading role during the siege of Leningrad during World War II. After the ceasefire agreement between Finland and the USSR was signed in Moscow on 4 September 1944, Zhdanov directed the Allied Control Commission in Finland until the Paris Peace Treaty of 1947. Zhdanov was appointed by Joseph Stalin to direct the Soviet Union's cultural policy in 1946. His first action was to censor Russian writers such as Anna Akhmatova and Mikhail Zoshchenko. He formulated what became known as the Zhdanov Doctrine. During 1946–1947, Zhdanov was chairman of the Soviet of the Union. In 1947, he organized the Common Forum, designed to coordinate and control the Communist parties around the world. In February 1948, he initiated purges among musicians, widely known as the struggle against formalism. Dmitry Shostakovich, Sergei Prokofiev, Aram Khachaturian and many other composers were reprimanded during this period. In June 1948, Stalin sent Zhdanov to the Common Forum meeting in Bucharest. The purpose of the meeting was to condemn Yugoslavia, but Zhdanov took a more restrained line, in contrast to his co-delegate and rival Georgy Malenko. This infuriated Stalin, who removed Zhdanov from all his posts and replaced him with Malenko. Zhdanov was transferred to a sanatorium, where he died. It is possible that his death was the result of an intentional misdiagnosis. Zhdanov died on 31 August 1948 in Moscow of heart failure. Nikita Khrushchev recalled in Khrushchev remembers that Zhdanov was an alcoholic, and that during his last days, Stalin would shout at him to stop drinking and insist that he drink only fruit juice. Stalin had talked of Zhdanov being his successor, but Zhdanov's ill health gave his rivals, Lavrentiy Beria and Georgy Malenko, an opportunity to undermine him. He was one of those accused during the U.S. House of Representatives Kirsten Committee investigation into the annexation of the Baltic states in 1953. Ideology, originating in 1946 and lasting until the late 1950s, Zhdanov's ideological code, known as the Zhdanov Doctrine, Zhdanovism or Zhdanovщина, defined cultural production in the Soviet Union. Zhdanov intended to create a new philosophy of artistic creation valid for the entire world. His method reduced all of culture to a sort of chart, wherein a given symbol corresponded to a simple moral value. Zhdanov and his associates further sought to eliminate foreign influence from Soviet art, proclaiming that incorrect art was an ideological diversion. This doctrine suggested that the world was split into two opposing camps, namely, the imperialistic, led by the United States, and the democratic, led by the Soviet Union, using Cold War terminology that also began in 1946. The one sentence that came to define Zhdanovщина was, "The only conflict that is possible in Soviet culture is the conflict between good and best. This cultural policy became strictly enforced, censoring writers, artists, and the intelligentsia, with punishment being applied for failing to conform to what was considered acceptable by Zhdanov's standards. This policy officially ended in 1952, seen as having a negative impact on culture within the USSR. The origins of this policy can be seen before 1946, when critics proposed that Russian classics had been influenced by famous foreign writers, but the policy came into effect specifically to target apolitical, bourgeois, individualistic works of the satirist Mikhail Zoshchenko and the poet Anna Akhmatova, respectively, writing for the literary magazines Zvezda and Leningrad. On the 20th of February 1948, Zhdanov's China shifted its focus towards anti-formalism, targeting composers such as Dmitri Shostakovich. That April, many of the persecuted composers were pressed into repenting for displaying formalism in the music in a special Congress of the Composers' Union. These composers were not rehabilitated by the Soviet Union until the 28th of May 1958. Family ties. Zhdanov's son, Yuri, married Stalin's daughter, Svetlana Alliluyeva, in 1949. The marriage ended in divorce in 1950. They had one daughter, Yekaterina. Honors and awards. 2 Orders of Lenin, Order of the Red Banner, Order of Suvorov, First Class, Order of Kutuzov, First Class, Order of the Red Banner of Labor, Medal for the Defense of Leningrad, Medal for the Victory over Germany in the Great Patriotic War 1941–1945. Andrei Zhdanov's birthplace, Mariupol, was renamed Zhdanov in his honor at Joseph Stalin's instigation in 1948, and a monument to Zhdanov was built in the central square of the city.